Welcome back to Game of Theories, where I introduce theories of management, administration, and leadership. This is episode 47. Today we'll explore social comparison theory, a theory that explains how individuals evaluate themselves by comparing themselves to others. It is a theory that has widespread implications for organizational behavior, employee motivation, and performance management. It helps us understand why employees constantly measure themselves against their coworkers, how leaders can leverage comparisons to drive productivity, and the potential pitfalls of creating an overly competitive place culture. In 1954, Leon Festinger, a social psychologist, introduced social comparison theory. But Festinger's brilliance did not stop there. Just 3 years later, in 1957, he proposed another influential theory, cognitive dissonance, which explains how people strive for internal consistency in their beliefs and actions. The two theories, social comparison theory and cognitive dissonance, are interconnected in fascinating ways. They both speak to our fundamental need to make sense of ourselves and our place in the world. Now let's focus on social comparison theory and its profound impact on organizational life. Social comparison theory states that we have an innate desire to evaluate our opinions and abilities by comparing ourselves to others. You walk into an office, as you settle at your desk, you can't help but glance around. How does your performance stack up against your colleagues? Is your project moving faster than theirs? Social comparison theory helps us understand why employees constantly measure themselves against their coworkers. There are three key aspects of social comparison: ubiquity, information seeking, and motivation. First, ubiquity. Comparisons are a fundamental human tendency. Whether it is a student checking their exam score against their classmates, an employee eyeing a colleague's promotion, or even someone scrolling through social media comparing their life to others, we are constantly engaging in this social comparison process, often without even realizing it. But here is where it gets really interesting. This tendency to compare, it's not unique to humans. In fact, it extends to animal kingdom. In an article titled "Monkeys Reject Unequal Pay" published in Nature in 2003, researchers Brosnan and Dovell conducted a study with Capuchin monkeys. Here is what they did. They trained monkeys to exchange tokens for cucumber slices, a fair trade in the monkey world. Then they gave some monkeys grapes, a more desirable trade for the same token. The result? The monkeys receive cucumbers, often refuse to eat or even throw the cucumbers back at the researchers. This reaction, also known as inequity aversion or inequality aversion, shows that even primates have a sense of fairness and respond negatively to unfavorable comparisons. Now, imagine this playing out in your workplace. When an employee perceives unfair treatment or unequal rewards, it can lead to dissatisfaction, decreased motivation, and even counterproductive work behaviors. Here, counterproductive work behaviors are behaviors that harm or intend to harm organizations or people in organizations. It ranges from minor fractions like wasting time or taking excessive breaks to more severe behaviors such as theft, deliberately disrupt workflows, harassment or social undermining, that is, gossip or deliberately withholding information from colleagues. In an article titled "Cheating More for Less," upward social comparison motivates the poorly compensated to cheat, published in Organizational Behavior and Human Decision Processes in 2014. The participants were given an opportunity to inflate their performance on a task. Those who perceived they were underpaid compared to others were more likely to over-report their performance, essentially lying to receive more compensation. This is a clear example of how feeling unfairly treated in terms of pay can lead to unethical environment. This is consistent with organizational justice, a theory I introduced in my previous video. The second key aspect of social comparison is information seeking. We engage in both active and passive information seeking. Active information seeking means we deliberately seek out information to make comparisons. For example, a manager may request performance data on other teams. We search for industry salary benchmarks online. An employee may directly ask a coworker about their salary. Now you might think this kind of direct questioning about pay is rare, but research suggests otherwise. In an article titled The Pay Transparency Dilemma, Development and the Validation of the Pay Information Exchange Preferences Scale, published in Journal of Applied Psychology in 2019, it was reported that pay information exchange is more common than expected, particularly among younger employees. About 30% of millennials have shared their salary with coworkers compared to only 8% of baby boomers. This generational difference suggests the shifting attitudes toward pay transparency in the workplace, suggesting that the pay discussions are becoming increasingly normalized. In contrast to active information seeking, passive information encountering means we come across comparison information without actively seeking it. For example, an employee may learn about team performance metrics during a meeting. You overhear colleagues discuss their recent promotions in the break room. You notice the timestamps on emails to gauge how late others work. Interestingly, the rise of social media and professional networking sites have blurred the line between active and passive information seeking. Platforms like LinkedIn can provide a wealth of comparison information about job titles, career progression, and even organizational perks without the user explicitly searching for it. This abundance of information can be a double-edged sword. While it can provide valuable benchmarks, it can also fuel anxiety and dissatisfaction if not managed properly. The third aspect of social comparison is comparison motivation. Why do we compare ourselves to others? It's not as simple as you may think. In an article titled Motives for Social Comparison, published in Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin in 1995, 6 primary motives for social comparison were identified: self-evaluation, self-improvement, self-enhancement, common bond, self-destruction, and altruism. Self-evaluation is about evaluating where we stand in relation to others. In the workplace, it could be a salesperson comparing their quarterly sales figures to their colleagues, an engineer gauging the quality of their code against industry standards, and a manager evaluating their leadership behaviors against other effective leaders in the organization. The self-evaluation motive helps us understand our relative standing and can inform our professional development goals. Self-improvement is about learning how to improve our performance and grow professionally. For example, a junior team member studying the work habits of more experienced team members. An employee seeks mentorship from a high-performing colleague, and a manager attends leadership workshops to develop skills they've observed in effective managers. Self-enhancement is the motive that drives us boost our self-esteem through comparisons. This motive can manifest in behaviors such as an employee focusing on tasks they excel at compared to their peers, a team leader emphasizing their group's success relative to other departments, and a professional highlighting their unique skills or experiences in a job interview. The common bond motive is about seeking similarities with others to feel connected. In the workplace, we observe that new employees bonding over shared challenges in their roles, colleagues finding common ground in work-life balance struggles, and team members connecting over shared professional goals or interest. This common bond motive can strengthen team cohesion and a sense of belonging in the organization. Self-destruction motive is about making comparisons that lower self-esteem, often linked to depression. An employee constantly compares themselves to a top performer and feels inadequate. A manager fixates on perceived shortcomings compared to peers. A coworker dwells on career setbacks relative to former classmates' success. Recognizing this self-destruction motive can help address negative thought patterns and promote mental health in the workplace. The motive of altruism is about comparing to understand and help others. For example, a mentor compares their early career challenges to a mentee's to offer relevant advice. A manager evaluates team members' strength and weakness to assign tasks effectively. Colleagues share their own struggles and solutions to support each other. In organizational research, the first three motives, self-evaluation, self-improvement, and self-enhancement, have received the most attention. However, the other motives can also play important roles in workplace dynamics. More importantly, those motives for social comparison are not mutually exclusive and can shift based on the context. For example, in an article titled Keeping Up with the Joneses, a field study of the relationship among upward, lateral, and downward comparison and pay level satisfaction, published in Journal of Applied Psychology in 2008. Researchers examined how employees' section with their pay was influenced by comparing themselves to others at different levels in an organization. The study focused on three types of social comparison: upward, lateral, and downward comparison. First, there is upward comparison. This happens when employees compare their pay to those who make more than them, typically leading to frustration and dissatisfaction because they feel undercompensated compared to higher paid colleagues. Next, we have lateral comparison. Here, employees look at their peers, those earning around the same as them. The study found that this usually results in neutral or slightly positive feelings because people often feel validated when their pay aligns with their colleagues. And finally, downward comparison. This is when employees compare themselves to those earning less. Not surprisingly, this tends to increase satisfaction because it makes employees feel more fortunate or successful. The key takeaway: pay satisfaction. It's not just about the actual number on the paycheck. It's also shaped by how employees see themselves relative to others. The direction of comparison, whether we look to those doing better or worse than us, can vary dramatically based on our motivation and the situation we are in. Festinger's original 1954 social comparison theory proposed a unidirectional drive upward, meaning we tend to compare ourselves to those who are better off or more skilled. However, subsequent research suggested a much more complex picture. Upward comparison, which is the comparison of ourselves to those who are better off or more skilled, can also lead to feelings of inadequacy, low self-esteem, and even depression if the perceived difference is substantial. For example, a mid-level manager compares their career trajectory to that of a recently promoted executive. If the manager perceives the gap in skills, experience, or achievements as too wide to bridge, they may experience decreased job satisfaction, lower self-esteem, lowered self-efficacy, and reduced motivation. This could be particularly pronounced if the manager believes that the factors beyond their control, such as organizational politics or limited advancement opportunities, make reaching a similar level of success seem unattainable. As a result, instead of feeling inspired to improve, the manager may become disengaged or even consider leaving the organization. So the same comparison can have different effects depending on how we interpret it. Comparison to understanding others can be either inspiring or deflating, depending on whether the success seems attainable or not. Moreover, our tendency to make upward or downward comparisons can be influenced by at least three factors: self-esteem, mood, and threat level. People with a high self-esteem tend to make more downward comparisons. Why? Well, if you're feeling good about yourself, you are more comfortable looking at those who seem less fortunate or skilled. You use downward comparisons as a way to boost your already positive self image. On the other hand, those with lower self esteem often make upward comparisons. While this can sometimes make them feel inadequate, it can also motivate them to improve. Next, let's talk about mood. When we're in a positive mood, we're more likely to make downward comparisons. We tend to seek out information about others who are worse off. We try to maintain our happy state. When we're feeling down, we might make more upward comparisons. This can sometimes make us feel worse, but it can also inspire us to do better. Third, we have threat level. When we feel threatened or insecure, we often turn to downward comparisons. This is consistent with self-enhancement motive we just talked about. It's our way of trying to feel better about ourselves when we're under pressure. For example, you receive negative feedback at work and then thinking, well, at least I'm doing better than Steve in accounting. This is a defense mechanism, and its effectiveness can vary. In addition to the three factors, self-esteem, mood, and threat levels, other factors like how relevant the comparison is to us, how close we are to the person we're comparing ourselves to, and even our cultural background can all play a role. This is a simplified model of social comparisons proposed in a recently published article titled "To Compare is Human," a review of social comparison theory in organizational settings, published in Journal of Management in 2024. The model outlines a three-phase process of social comparison: selection, appraisal, and response. This model provides a framework for understanding how social comparisons unfold in organizational settings across different levels of analysis. Let's start with selection. The selection process initiates the comparison process and consists of two components: information acquisition and comparison motivation. Information acquisition, also known as information seeking, refers to how an actor obtains information, either through active seeking or passive encountering. Comparison motivation represents the underlying driver or reason for making a comparison. Two elements interact to determine whether a social comparison will occur or not. When both are present to a sufficient degree, the process moves to the next phase. Now we're at appraisal. In the appraisal phase, we evaluate the comparison along two components: target and dimension. The target refers to who is being compared to, such as a coworker, a leader, a rival team. The dimension represents what is being compared, which could be attributes like salary, performance, or social status. Importantly, the dimension includes not only the attribute being compared, but also its balance, whether the comparison reveals a superior, equal, or inferior standing relative to the target. The final phase, response, captures how we react to the comparison. Those responses are categorized as either assimilative or contrastive. Assimilative responses are the responses that move toward or become more like the comparison target, while contrastive responses are the ones move away from or differentiates oneself from the target. Those responses can manifest emotionally, cognitively, or behaviorally. This model represents a linear progression through three phases, but it is important to recognize that in practice, social comparison can be a dynamic and iterative process. The simplicity and flexibility of this model allows it to be applied across different levels of analysis, from individuals to entire organizations, and to different types of comparisons. This versatility makes it a valuable tool for understanding and researching social comparison processes in diverse organizational contexts. Why is social comparison theory important for leaders? Social comparison theory helps explain employee motivation and performance, organizational culture, team dynamics, and organizational decision making. Leaders need to manage the flow of information in your organization, which influences social comparison and your team's performance. For example, you're sharing performance data. It's not just about what you share, but how and when you share it. Timing matters as well. Sharing performance data right before holidays might dampen spirits, while doing it at the start of a new quarter could energize your team. When sharing organization-wide metrics, always provide context. Don't just say metrics A is up 10%. Explain what that means for different departments and the organization as a whole. Context helps the employee understand their role in the bigger picture and reduces misinterpretations and unproductive comparisons. Remember, as a leader, you're not just managing people, you're also managing information and perceptions. Be mindful of how you share performance data and considering potential comparisons, you can create a more transparent, fair, and motivated workplace. Leaders can leverage social comparison as a powerful motivational tool to drive organizational performance and employee engagement. One effective approach is to set up friendly competitions and challenges when appropriate. This could be short-term contests with clear, achievable goals or interdepartmental challenges focused on innovation. Publicizing team or department performance can drive collective improvement. Consider creating dashboards displaying key performance indicators for each team and sharing regular performance update in team meetings. Highlighting success stories and effective practices across departments can inspire and motivate others. Incorporating relative performance metrics in goal-setting process can provide context and motivation. Implement a system of objective and key results that include both absolute and relative targets. Set goals based on industry benchmarks or historical performance improvements. For executive and managerial evaluations, peer group comparisons can be particularly effective. Remember to regularly review and adjust goals based on changing external conditions or organizational priorities. Balancing individual and team comparisons is important for maintaining a collaborative environment. Align individual goals with team and organizational objectives by developing a clear line of sight between individual contributions and overall organizational performance. Use cascading goals to ensure alignment from management and administration to frontline employees. Regular check-ins can help discuss how individual work influences team and organizational goals. Implement both individual and team-based incentives to encourage personal excellence and collaboration. Design a balanced compensation structure with both individual and team performance bonuses. Recognize and reward top individual performers as well as high-performing teams. Consider profit sharing or gain sharing programs to tie individual rewards to overall organizational performance. Non-monetary rewards like extra time off or development opportunities can be effective for team achievements. To broaden employees' comparative perspective, consider rotating them through different roles or teams. Establish a formal job rotation program for high potential employees and encourage cross-functional project teams. Shadowing or ride-along programs can give employees insight into other roles. Temporary assignments to different departments or locations can provide valuable experience. Creating mentoring programs that pair employees from different functional areas can facilitate understanding and collaboration across the organization. As you implement those strategies, regularly evaluate their impact on employee morale and team dynamics. Be prepared to adjust your approach based on different personality types and cultural backgrounds in your team. Ensure that competition does not undermine collaboration, lead to unethical behavior. Use comparisons to identify skill gaps and inform training and development initiatives. Leverage technology and data analytics to provide real-time or near real-time performance feedback and comparisons. Above all, create a growth mindset culture where comparisons are seen as opportunities for learning and improvement rather than judgment or punishment. Remember, comparisons are inevitable. It's our humans' innate desire. Your job as a leader is to guide them in a direction that benefits both individual team members and the organization as a whole.